Hi, and welcome to a special day after Thanksgiving edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, Black Friday, November 25th. I don't know why they call it Black Friday. I never have, but it is in any case. And we are joined by the fellas, Josh Molina of News Hawk and Santa Barbara Talks fame. Nick Welsh, the award-winning columnist of the Santa Barbara Independent, and also the editor-in-chief of that esteemed publication.
I think I'm actually not the editor-in-chief. That's Mary
Oh,
Ann.
that's right. You're the what are you? The
I'm
executive.
the executive editor, which is really the bridge to nowhere title.
Well, the fact that you just pointed that out tells me that Mary Ann must watch this show. All right, big story this week. Housing, the housing element. The county has received the 5,644 new units mandate from the state of California that they have to at least locate the places to build such between 2023 and 2031. This is the RENA number. Josh, I'm going to ask you what that stands for shortly. But so they've identified a number of zoning places, and they've just taken it on the road, and they're getting decidedly mixed reviews. Josh, what's the news and angle in this?
Well, there's a whole bunch of news angles with the county housing element, the biggest of which is that the county is not going to meet the state deadline of February 15th to have their housing element certified. And what does that mean? That means that state law goes into effect, and developers now will be able to get over-the-counter or ministerial permits to build affordable housing units as long as they have 20% that are affordable. And so that's significant in terms of relinquishing local control of the planning process. The county, admittedly, they had this workshop. They started late, and then once they got into it, they realized, whoa, we don't have a whole lot of spots. We're going to have to analyze rezoning agricultural land. And that took time, and that pushed them back, and they just finished it. And now they can start working on the housing element. So all this is going to push it back past the deadline. So there's that question of what happened in the county planning department, long range planning, that they are going to miss this deadline. Lisa Plowman, who's the head of the department, she had said, hey, we're not alone. Other jurisdictions are doing it too. So, it's sort of aligning herself with that, but there are others who are completing it. So that's the political, like, what is going on? Maybe they want some more housing for the next year, and this is a way to sort of backhandedly, indirectly facilitate that. I don't know, but I do know that there's a big mystery about why the county is going to miss their deadline. The other part of it is Carpinteria Valley, and the fact that these proposed rezoning of agricultural sites are in Carpinteria Valley. None of them are for cannabis, and so there's this outpouring of people from the Carpinteria Valley who are saying, hey, wait a minute, we don't want more housing in the Carpinteria Valley. There's already a ton of traffic. And your friend Ann Louise Bardock, Jerry, she spoke at this workshop and said, you can't even go anywhere from 3 to 5 as it is. If we put housing there, it's going to be impossible. And then she also noted in that conspiracy theory DOS thing that she didn't name DOS. That's me adding that context. But how come none of the proposed rezone sites are cannabis farms? How come it's just other agriculture? So Carpinteria Valley's coming unglued too.
Nick, it definitely points to the key question here, which is, why does Doss Williams hate everyone in Carpinteria except cannabis growers and retailers? What's your take on the sites in well, not only in Carp,
Well, I mean, the big
there's an
picture,
equal number in Goleta, but go ahead.
yeah, no, I mean, Goleta, yeah, I mean, I don't know that, Doss Williams has his, Machiavellian fingers in Goleta. I mean, it's sort of like, why did we go to war with Iraq? Because that's where the oil was, right? And why did, John Jones or rob banks? Because that's where the money was. And, if you want to build housing, you go to where the land is, and that's ag. In Goleta, it got hammered, for the same thing as the county. The state told them, sorry, dude, you're not, your application is not specific enough. And one thing here, just to put it in, follow up on what Josh was saying, the housing element this time around is a whole different breed of cat than housing elements every 8 years. This is far more intense, far more rigorous, far more, no, your dog does not get to eat your homework. It's sort of a everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die proposition. And that we all want housing. We all say we want housing, but we all want to keep things the way they are. This time, the state's saying, no, it's not working. You got to show me the numbers where it's not like a theoretical possibility, but a practical possibility. And that you have to really give me the level of detail and granularity that they have never had to give before. So while I have been quick to jump on some of the conspiratorial theories myself, I kind of think what really is happening is the level of detail required is just exponentially more. The other thing, sort of, where it seems more of it's a pyrrhic threat, is that, okay, if we don't get it done by February, developers got to do what they want. They got to do what they want if they do 20%. Now it's
20%, 20% what?
affordable. And
That's the missing middle, or what is that?
No, I don't. I
think it's both. I think it's both. I think it's
both.
middle and affordable.
Okay.
Developers have resisted all the inclusionary housing regulations that the city and the county have proposed, saying that 10% is all we can do, and anything beyond 10% is not feasible. So it's a threat. I don't know how big of a threat it is. I also think that there's going to be a lot of people who are late coming into compliance.
Yeah, and Prince Gavin, our fine governor, is into performative politics more than most, and he just did this thing with the homeless, rejecting every county's homelessness plan, and it would not surprise me that I don't know, 80% of counties miss their deadline, and so that slips. But so let me understand, or let me just raise a hypothetical here. So is it possible that the county started late? They sort of foresaw that there would be this outrage, and I don't want to shorthand Goleta, Josh, because you did quote a number of officials from there. They're also outraged. And therefore, it's not necessarily not in the county's interest to miss the deadline, because then they could go ahead with the housing and say, "Oh, gee whiz, it's not our fault. It's all the state." I mean, am I being too? I've been reading a lot of QAnon lately. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole here.
Well, I mean, I'm sure if we pose that question to any county planner, they would all say absolutely not to our faces. I think they'd probably be offended at that. But we are reporters, we are journalists, and we are skeptical. So I don't know. I mean, it could be something. Well, if we just don't get it done and we do it right, we do it slow. Well, maybe state law kicks in, and it is what it is, because we all need housing. I do want to note, though, that the other political part of this is the city of Goleta, which you referenced, is you had Mayor Paul Perotti, you had council members Stuart Kasdan and Kyle Richards, and they all spoke at this meeting, and they were very upset at the county. And their argument was, hey, we wanted these Eastern Goleta Valley areas in our sphere of influence. We went to LAFCO, the Local Agency Formation Commission, and said, we want these in our sphere so we can control them. And LAFCO said, no, these are ag sites, and we don't want to take any chance here of having that be housing. And then here, the county says, we're going to include those for rezoning and housing. So Goleta is like, wait a minute, you told us no, and now you're going to propose them for housing. So that's a political battle that's taking place. So lots of egos clashing at the county building, at Goleta, over who gets to decide what the future is going to look like. And the truth of the matter is, Jerry, if you didn't grow up here, you might see Goleta as being this place where that we can just build. Oh, it's suburbia, it's country. Come on, right? But if you did grow up here in Goleta, you see, like, we're already getting all kinds of housing. What about these other jurisdictions? What about Santa Barbara? So this is going to be a huge clash down the road. Nick will probably say it's probably a little hyperbole. It's not going to be that dramatic. And how many units are we going to see in a year? But these are all questions that are coming up out of
No,
this
no,
odd meeting.
I think that this is a qualitative difference in terms of the intensity of housing that we're going to have to prepare for. And there are questions. I mean, I was speaking to somebody in the county this week, and they're saying that a number of our groundwater basins are so heavily hit that if it continues like this for another year, we're going to have to stop issuing wells. So there are real questions of sustainability. It's not just some eco buzzword that means we don't like housing. What it means is we don't have enough water for the people who are here. How are we going to make water for the people who are coming? So, the state has these sort of, they are paint by numbers with big paintbrushes, and the reality we live in is a much more fine point. And I think that local governments like Santa Barbara, where there are real constraints, it isn't just imaginary, we just like it the way it is, are going to have to deal with that. And there's no easy answers.
Yeah, and that's, again, goes to Gavin's hypocrisy, out of one side of his mouth, we got to build, and then on the other side, oh, we've got to, you got to stop using so much water. We don't have enough water. That's huge. And he sort of manages never to put those two.
Well, he's a big supporter of desal plants, and he got the Coastal Commission has approved 3, but the big one, the
They
sort of
shot
mama
down.
bear of Poseidon,
And among those voting against it was our very own representative, Megan.
Megan Harmon. Megan Harmon was appointed by the governor, and he serves at her pleasure. And her first vote was, "Sorry, dude, I'm not going to go along."
Yeah, good for her. Good for her. All right. But Nick, what do you think about Josh's point that LAFCO was MIA on the RENA? Were they really AWOL?
I can't speak about LAFCO. I can tell you SBK. Let's get into our bag of tricks here of mind-numbing acronyms. Santa Barbara County Association of Governments, for those who don't have it at the ready. They were on this so many years ago. I mean, I think I got calls from them 3 years ago. Nick, can we have a meeting? And they all came down to my office, and there were like 3 or 4 of them. They just buried me alive and sort of the numbers and what we had to do. So SBK has been on this. Now,
On the housing. You mean?
on the housing element. Now, SBK is a completely different animal than LAFCO. And I could see, if I'm the county of Santa Barbara, I want to be able to take credit for all that farmland outside of the city limits of Goleta and say, see, this is what we're doing. Whereas the city of Goleta would, of course, want to do just the same.
Yeah, all kidding aside, I mean, it really does seem like CARP's kind of taking it in the shorts on a lot of different fronts. I mean, is that just coincidental or something? Or, I mean, what's going on?
Do I think Das Williams is punishing Carpenter?
Oh, I didn't mention him.
Yeah, you did. Come on,
well,
Jerry.
that was a long time ago.
Jerry, it's Thanksgiving. It's Thanksgiving.
All right, let's
leave
be
Das alone. There was, I think, again, the county has a genius for stepping on its dick when it rolls these things out. Excuse me, I can't use that language.
No, it's okay.
We saw that with Modoc Road. We saw that with Modoc Road, and we saw it here. I mean, they rolled out this blueprint with all of these possible places that might get
trees
cut from agriculture. And then when they had the meeting, they said, "Oh, just kidding. All these here in yellow," which was like most of them. I mean, I think you saw, Josh, you know the numbers better than me, but there was like 11 sites that could be converted in carp. And by the time it was over, it was down to 4 or something of that magnitude. So it started like, holy crap, Batman, they're coming for us. And then by the time the meeting happened, oh, we didn't really mean that. So I think the county just made their life that much harder by the way they rolled it out.
All right. Speaking of, never mind. Kelly Brown, the restaurateur, said a couple of weeks ago, and triggering a lively and robust conversation on this very show, that he was going to close the Natural Cafe down at the lower State Street for a number of reasons, but among them, he said, quote, the rat vermin problem, which starts with the city and their lack of any program to address this, has in the last few years become intolerable. Now, he got some pushback from his colleagues in the industry, and I guess this week was saying, oh, no, it's the media. The media is really blowing this out of proportion. Well, yeah, it's interesting. You both wrote pieces on this.
Those are true.
Well, what did you get? I mean, did the restaurant people call you up or what? How did those pieces?
Can I go
come
first,
about?
Nick, and then
Yeah.
you can clean up afterward? You can finish the game here. Okay, so I spent a Saturday talking to 5 different businesses because unbeknownst to me, after my story came out, Nick's story came out, they were really angry at Kelly Brown and the narrative that rats were downtown.
That's a bad narrative.
They're concerned that they were feeling like one business owner was throwing the rest of them under the bus because they were leaving State Street. And nationally, Santa Barbara is going to get this reputation for having rats downtown because of the parklet. So I talked to M Special and I talked to Night Lizard and, the Cruisery and a whole bunch of places. And they are saying, you know what, there's rats, but there have been rats downtown forever. They're not because of the parklets. M Special pulled up their parklet. Night Lizard pulled it up. There were no rats. And so they were really personally hurt by this. And so there was also this big meeting that I know Nick wrote about. I'll let him talk about that. But I can tell you right now that any backpedaling that rats were the problem is a false narrative, because what happened was this email was sent out and it was sent to the media, and it says right there that the rats so you can't take back what's in writing. It says right there that the rats are the problem. So that's what we reported on. But talking to the city of Santa Barbara, Sarah Clark, she's like, we have less rats than we used to. And if we have any rats, it's not because of the parklet. So the backpedaling is not the media's fault. It's probably because of the massive backlash of the other businesses and the city of Santa Barbara.
Now, I agree
with everything that Josh just said there, except for that little wrinkle. I think I am going to impugn my own motives, but certainly I'm going to impugn Josh's along the way.
What's new, Nick? What's new?
There was something deliciously irresistible about Kelly Brown's story. We've been writing about business owners complaining about the homeless, blah, 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 ad infinitum. All of a sudden, we get a letter from a disgruntled, outspoken restaurant owner talking about something different. And what is he talking about? Rats. I mean, it's just the guy says interest. It is clickbait.
It's intolerable. It's the rats have become intolerable.
Okay, he said it.
And the city has no program, but the city does have.
He was wrong. Point one. The city for the last 10 years has been spending $18,000 a year on lens, pest control, to set 80 to 90 traps up from the 2 to the 1200 block of State Street. When they started, the first month they got 200 rats. Then the highest number they ever got was 320. Today is somewhere like 40 to 50 a month.
A month.
A month. And, Kelly Brown has said, well, the rat traps they use are these sort of black boxes, and they only change them, they only check on them once a week. Well, they actually check on them twice a week. They also have this stuff that they feed the rats. It's a bait that makes them, when they poop, it makes their poop glow in the dark if you have an ultraviolet light. No, come on. Who can say the city of Santa Barbara is not doing everything when they're making the rats glow in the dark poop? All right.
Wait a minute. So is the contract 18,000 annually or 18,000 a month?
Annually.
So I
believe that's right.
And you're saying they 50 rats a month top, so that's $30 a rat. Those are some.
It's 30 to $50 a rat.
It's almost as much as James Carriaco paid to
you go.
500 votes in Goleta.
But
I saw him.
Just to go back on rats, because it's more interesting than talking about poor James Carriaco. I called up my favorite agency, the agency which I would like to work for when I grow up, Santa Barbara County Vector Control. And I talked to the head of County Vector Control, and he did not say anything specific to the rat problem on State Street to the extent there is or is not one. He did say, however, that when he was driving into work recently, on 2 days in the same week, he saw a rat on the freeway. And to his professional,
This is the head of the vector control told you this?
yeah, he said, if I see a rat on the freeway, that is a sign that there's a lot of rats around. Now, he also told me,
Was the rat in the slow lane or the fast
I
lane?
didn't ask, but we aren't getting, let's just say we're not getting CHP press releases on rats on the freeway. The other thing he told me is he has gotten recently 2 rats in his own car at home. So they're getting cold, and the rats like to go someplace warm.
Tell
So
them
they
to stay off the freeway.
So they like to hang out on the engine block. So, and what we have, and I can tie this now down to Modoc Road, because all roads do converge to Modoc
Yes,
Road.
I'm sure.
Rats like to hang out in palm trees. They have palm tree fruit is a delectable for the rats. And up in those palm fronds, they're just massive colonies. You want to talk about a harborage for rats? It's not the parklet, it's the palm fronds. And the palm fronds are what we have in such glorious profusion along Modoc Road.
Of course, there's, an easy solution to that, which is what they do in Hawaii and Tahiti and everywhere else. Is you put a strip of tin around the bottom, and the rats can't get their little claws there, and they fall off. All right, so So the spin is we have no rat problem because we've always had a rat problem. A. And then B, did you talk to Kelly, Nick?
Yeah.
And he blamed the media.
No, he didn't blame the media. What he said is, and he's got a point. He goes, if you read his whole letter, it's one of several things that he talks about. And really, what Josh and I have exploited this story for all of its sensational potential, because it gives us another way to tell the story about the battle over Parklets and what do we want to do about State Street. And it's a new and different wrinkle. And for us, we're bored and it's fun. Okay? I said it.
Josh, Nick has just accused you of writing stories so that people will read them. How do you respond?
Yeah, I got a great nut graph in my housing element story. That was just so people can read it. But yeah, rats downtown. I mean, Kelly Brown, the homelessness, there's a ton of issues, but how can we resist an email like we got talking about how there's, rats are killing State Street?
Did anybody talk to Jim Cannell?
I talked to him.
What did he say?
Well, Jim Cannell is always angry and upset at the city of Santa Barbara and what he perceives as a lack of management and enforcement and oversight. He owns more property, or SEMA, his company, owns more properties on state than anyone else. And so he's a big player in this. He agreed with Kelly Brown, that's his tenet. And he said, this is why we can't.
Agreed about the rats?
Yeah, he did. They were kind of in sync on this issue.
I mean, the big thing which Josh alluded to is that, there was a meeting between Kelly Brown and 17 members of the Beverage and Food Committee, subcommittee of the downtown organization, and they let him know they were not thrilled. And the point that Bob Stout made is, look, the ad hoc subcommittee of the future of State Street has come up with some immediate fixes that, the parklets look a little ratty. We're going to put design standards on them. We're going to get rid of the lattices. We're going to get rid of the roofs. We're going to have some sort of unified paint palette. We're going to deal with the stormwater runoff issues, and we're going to charge rent. So they issued a poll of their own, which I don't pretend to know how scientifically it was presented, but it was about 800, 900 people. And somewhere to 800 to 900 of them said, we like the park list.
These
and
are
that's why we come
consumers.
downtown.
These are people who were using the goods and services on State Street, not business owners, correct?
Right. Yeah, these are people who come down and they say they like to come down to State Street better than they used to because there's a sense of liveliness. And, you know, again, my subjective reaction is, yeah, some of the parklets are pretty ratty and it does look like they're pushing the taking advantage of the situation, but there's a bunch that it is infinitely more lively. And so this is really a broader a broader debate about that whole issue.
Yes, and the committees, the way how quickly it's moving under the leadership of Dave Davis.
Oh, there's two committees, Jerry. You got the wrong one there.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. The head of the slow planners.
He's the slow food movement.
America. All right. So Josh, is it true that your hero Megan Harmon, council member Harmon, is going to put in an amendment saying that the parklets also have to have a sign that says "No rats allowed"? No. Yes. Okay.
I don't think that'll get approved. No.
Moving along, Josh, you had a couple of interesting stories about schools this week, and the one that did catch my attention the most, I have to say, was the principal of Santa Barbara Junior High being suspended because he used what I assume is the N-word in the context of a meeting with a kid who used the N-word. Have I got that right?
Yeah, and I want to give credit to Genial at the Independent who had that story first, and I wrote about it later. I was working on a different story involving racism in the Goleta Union School District, so eventually I wrote them both. But yeah, essentially what happened was, and let me preface this saying Santa Barbara Unified is not like super open about talking about this issue at all.
They just hired a new press guy. He's not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get the sense he's the problem at all. I get the sense he's just doing his job, but it's more of a.
Certainly seems earnest.
Yeah, he seems earnest in an entirely different tone than the last person who was there. So let's just say this, okay? Apparently there was some conflict somewhere, and the N-word was used by
at Santa Barbara Junior
High by students, and then the principal, Daniel DuPont, apparently was trying to handle this and then used the N-word in unabbreviated form. And this is what Gene reported. I actually could not get Santa Barbara Unified to tell me that. They just referred it to as a racial slur. And so that happened. And so that got reported and he got suspended for a week because I think we know in 2022, like, I don't really care what your excuse is. You don't say the full word, especially if you're in leadership position and you're supposedly going to all these anti-training and anti-bias training. It's just horrible judgment, even if you're
DuPont is not one of these new guys that Hilda brought in, right? He's been in the district, correct? Yeah,
he's been around. He was just appointed that position earlier this year, but he's been around in Santa Barbara Unified. Yeah.
No, but Nick, there's something. I'm sorry. There's something wrong about this. I mean, the guy is trying to impart a lesson, or he's trying to deal with a discipline, whatever it is. He's using it in the context of how it is. I don't.
I guess here's the deal. Here's the deal.
Suspending him, really?
You know, there's a lot of chickens coming home to roost, and they ain't all turkeys in your pot. And
I'm gonna write that one down.
And you know, in 2022, read the memo. You don't get to use the N-word ever, period, exclamation point. And if you are in a position of authority, you can exert your authority and your ability to illustrate the point with a couple. You're trying to argue with what, junior high school students? You're trying to break through to junior high school students. And I get it. He's trying to illustrate the absurdity of what they're doing. I understand, but dude, you don't do it. Not now. And not really ever. so is that overkill? You've got a district with, I can't even think, 13 racial episodes, involving racial offenses given to Black students. You know, I think the district is trying to come to terms with how it behaves, and he gets a pass for good intentions, but it was a stupid decision on his
How
part.
long was he suspended?
I believe it was a week.
It was weak.
Without pay or with pay?
I thought it was with pay, but I could be wrong.
I believe it was with pay. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's called a vacation where you live.
Yeah, no, I understand.
I mean, Jerry, I mean, like, we all know what the N word is, so it's not like you have to say it to make it clearer. I mean, the only reason you'd have to say it is if there's some misunderstanding of the word, but we all know what it means. So, I mean, I think if you're a highly paid administrator, like, you have to know that. You have to know you don't say it.
Yeah.
We know other words.
I mean, I would like to see a transcript of the context in which he used.
Well, that's a good point. That's Santa Barbara Unified's issue. I mean, it's like Santa Barbara Unified. You need to tell us what's going on, and they mask everything under personnel. But they mask too much under personnel. You can tell us more than what they told us, and instead it comes through these statements, and we've got to interpret them and figure out what's going on. And this would just be a lot better if it were, just like, hey, let's come forward and say this happened, instead of having to be pushed by, the independent, and then I'm following up and they're doing the same thing. It's like, just tell us what happened. That's all.
I mean, it's gotta be like an impossible situation. I mean, here you have, junior high school students who are, I don't know how about you, but when I was a junior high school student, I was looking for any verbal Molotov cocktails to throw I could find.
You still are looking for anything. What are you talking about?
And they're all going to do that, and you have a bunch of administrators scrambling to how do we address the issue of racism, and there's always going to be excesses, and there's going to be
Can someone tell me that this is a bit of a tangent, but I am related to a student at Santa Barbara Junior High, and since he's in the 7th grade, and since he started going, he now begins every sentence with the word "brah." Brah, what do you mean? What is that? Why is he doing that? What is that about? It's not bro. He's brah.
It's brah. It's brah. We live in California. Brah.
Okay. All right. And then Josh, the other story, the Healing Justice, who we've heard a lot about in the last couple of years now, is in Goleta. And what happened there?
Okay, so Crystal Farmer Seacart, who's one of the original co-founders of Healing Justice Santa Barbara, her son was called the N-word in a recess incident, and that was reported to a teacher. Obviously, she found out, and she obviously was very unhappy with this, and her son was traumatized. And so this was another example from Healing Justice's perspective, from a parent's perspective, from an African American family's perspective, of systematic racism. And how could this happen? How could the system not be teaching students that this word is not okay? Now, they are first graders, and so there was a meeting. Healing Justice made a number of demands for more anti-bias training, to hire more people of color, for training for people who are not African American to understand what the meaning of that word means, and a whole lot of demands. Now, I did also talk to Goleta Union School District, and so they heard everything, and I think that Crystal felt they weren't as responsive as they could have been. But their bottom line was, these are first graders, and if an adult uses the word, they know what that meaning is. If a child uses that word, they're often repeating it, and so they may not, they were saying, understand the full power of that word. So they want to be age appropriate in their discipline or how they respond to that. And so that was sort of Goleta Union School District's response that they sort of said, and so that's where it's at. And I think the bottom line here is that
But she's trying to get her kid
acceptable.
transferred, right? She's trying to get her kid transferred.
Yeah, she asked for a transfer to Santa Barbara Charter School, as I reported, and I think that's still in play to see if that's gonna happen. And so there's going to be more pressure on Goleta Union School District to do something about this. I know that Crystal reached out to the board, and I believe Ethan Bertrand responded. He's not on it yet. Luz Reyes Martin responded. Emily Zacharias responded. She's not on the board yet, but the others did it. And I think it's really like you have to respond. That's one of the
Richard Mayer didn't respond.
Not according to Crystal, but that's outrageous. Like, you can't just be one of these people who responds when it's convenient to respond. Like, leadership is getting out in front and saying something and having some sort of effort to address the situation. So I think there's a lot of feeling of frustration on her end.
Who's the superintendent of Goleta Union? Remind me.
Diane Galindo Roybal, and she is fairly new. She's maybe a year and a half.
How do we assess the relative abilities of her and Hilda? Would you say? Is she up here and Hilda's
I don't know. I think that I cover Santa Barbara Unified and I don't cover Goleta, so I don't really know. I don't know. It's one of those, going back to what Nick Welsh said, is like, the county, Goleta, it's a lot of stuff happens because we don't have enough firepower journalists to be at every one of these meetings anymore and cover this stuff, so whatever. I'm not going to go on my tangent on journalism, but I don't know. I don't have enough information to say about how she's doing.
But just to kind of follow up with where you're going on some of this is, this came up in the campaign between Gabe Escobedo and Dan LaBerge when they were running for the city of Santa Barbara Unified School Board, and it was LaBerge's position. There had to be zero tolerance, and he was very emphatic. And Gabe Escobedo was, well, when I hear the word zero tolerance, I start to think about a lot of people who are being sent to prison and locked up and the keys thrown away. And really, we need to have teachable moments incorporated here as well. And so it's, how do you respond? And I could, again, you bring up, this is a first grade kid, like, you throw away the first grader? No, obviously not. This is like, you try to say, hey, dude, or assuming it's a dude, but if it's whoever, you deal with it.
So I just on this question of transparency by the districts, relatively speaking. So just so I understand, so did the officials at Goleta Union confirm what Crystal said? Did they give you that much information about it, or were they, were they just kind of vague and?
Yeah. So like Santa Barbara Unified, Goleta in their statement did not say the N-word. They instead say a racial slur. So in terms of their confirmation, they're not denying that, no one at Goleta denied that what Crystal told me happened. And in fact, it's mentioned in correspondence. And so no, it is not denied. They're not denying that. But in the Parent Square email they put out, and also in their responses to me, and the chain of emails that I saw that were sent to me, it is mentioned there. But they're not actually, saying that. They're just referring to it as a racial slur.
All right, and then finally, a great Santa Barbaran passed this week, I guess at the age of 90, Bob Handy. Nick, you had a very nice obit. Who was Bob Handy?
Well, Bob Handy was sort of the Democratic Party before there was a Democratic Party here in town. And he, showed up at every event wearing his, colors showing that he served in the military during Korea and Vietnam. think it was even before that. He served from, I think he was 17 until 30 in the military, and came, grew up, born in New York, grew up in North Carolina under unhappy circumstances. So I got to get the hell out of here, and he joined the Navy, and wound up at Port Hueneme, and said, "Hey, this is kind of cool." And was lucky enough to buy some real estate out in Goleta and Montecito when it was 30 grand, and became, he's a New York guy, and so was a knee-jerk Democrat, and sort of was very involved in the Democratic Party politics, and absolutely anything and everything to do with veterans affairs and veterans benefits. And he was sort of a take no prisoners, grumpy, rumpled, in your face, I'm going to tell it how I see it, whether you like it or not kind of guy. He got into it pretty hard and heavy with Hazel Blankenship, who was fairly formidable in her own right, and also a veterans activist over some changes proposed at the Veterans Memorial Building, and he helped lead the charge to make that impossible. I think they wanted to have a veterans museum there, and he was worried that this was going to make it too fancy and make it hard for veterans to have access to it the way they've always had. And he did not get along with the sort of new breed of Democrats that have since taken over. He warred famously with Daraka Larimore Hall, who has taken the Democratic Party from sort of a ragtag bunch of whatever to now we refer to it as a machine. Whether you like it or not, he made that happen. And Bob Handy didn't like it, and he and Daraka famously.
Well, they got into it over the gang injunction.
The gang injunction. It was one of those exchanges that said it all. The city at that time, 2012, was pursuing a gang injunction, which was widely disapproved of by liberal progressive activists, and particularly those in the Democratic Party. And they wanted to take out a position saying they opposed it. And Handy said, well, and he at that time sat on the Police and Fire Commission, said, hey, shouldn't we have the police here to hear his side of the story?
What a concept.
And Daraka said to him famously, this is not a debating society.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, it's authoritarianism of the left. Okay. Well, Nick Welsh, Josh Molina, thank you so much for joining us on this Black Friday, day after Thanksgiving. I hope everyone had a good holiday, and we will see you next time on Newsmakers. Take care.
Thanks.